Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms. I'm so excited to say that. I have been waiting for weeks now to start this channel, and welcome. If this is your first time here and you don't know anything about this channel, it is going to be an entire channel devoted just to stories of my life. And I am currently working on a book of stories about my childhood, lessons I learned from my mother, lessons I learned from other people, and it is titled I'm Still That Kid. And I'm so excited about it because that is kind of what spurned this channel, is that I look all over YouTube for other YouTubers that have relatable story times and story times where there are lessons to be learned. I watch a lot of TED Talks. I love them. And you know, one of my favorite TED Talks of all time is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's The Danger of a Single Story, where she talks in there, you know, about how much power we have in our story, but that if you only hear one perspective of somebody's story, you get a very jaded account of the world, right? And so it's very, very important to hear other people's stories and all stories. And one of the things that I really want to stress on this channel, other than just my stories, that I hope that at the end of each one you guys will learn something from, or you'll learn something from something that I learned from somebody else or whatever, is that you guys will realize the importance of your story. That each of us have a story that is important. And you know, whether your story is about raising a family or being a host at Walmart, or if your story is about having a chronic disease for many, many years, or being in recovery from addiction, or whether your story is about being a movie star, whether your story is happy or sad, whatever it is, we all have stories that are collective to the human experience. And one of the things that I love is hearing about other people's stories. And from a very, very young age, I loved the art of storytelling. And I don't really consider myself an author or, you know, I don't know, a YouTuber. And I say all the time jokingly, I'm a dude with a camera. But really what I am is a storyteller, and I've always been attracted to people telling stories from a very young age. And you know, whether that was in books that I read, or whether that was, you know, in different movies that I was raised on, like Gone with the Wind, or Almost Famous that I loved, my mom and I used to watch all the time together, or one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies, It's a Wonderful Life. You know, or even in the songs that I used to listen to and that I was raised on, and two of my mom and dad's favorite albums, favorite artists were Bob Dylan and Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. And so, you know, for me, songs and music have so many stories to them, right? And when I hear music, I am like filled with other people's stories. And I've always been attracted to hearing other people's stories. I can remember as a kid, like sitting at my grandma's, you know, kitchen table, and she and her friends would be sitting there and they would be playing Honeymoon Bridge, or they would be playing four of them playing bridge and smoking Salem Lights and drinking coffee. And I would sit there as a little kid drinking these little, you know, the little bottles of Coke, and I'd just be like listening to everything. And I felt like I was in this world that I was kind of invisible, but I was allowed to be there, and I loved it. I lived for those stories. And as a little kid, my parents used to always say to me, okay, Peter, this is adult time, because I was always around adults. And, you know, as an only child that didn't have many friends, that's where I found that I fit in. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to be an adult, which I think at times I did. It was that I was very attracted to that world and the stories. And, you know, it's interesting because I could have told you all of the gossip that was going around all of my parents' friends, because I was the ears that nobody knew were around. And I loved those stories. They just, to hear about somebody, and, you know, my mom later in life would say to me, like, you know, oh, did you know Judy Smith at church on Sunday, blah, 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 whatever. And I'd be like, uh-huh, Mom. But what's so funny is, back in the day when she would tell me those things, I knew every detail about every person's life. And I've always loved that. When I was very, very little, my mom used to take me to the library, and she would say, I got a library card when I was like 5 or 6, and she was like, you can check out anything you want. And I'd say, okay. And I'd get like big stacks of books. And she'd say, honey, you're not going to read all those books. And I'd be like, yes, I will, Mom. I promise I will. And she'd say, okay. And, you know, from a young age, my mom read me, you know, all of the Richard Scarry books, and, you know, the Go Dog Go, and Amelia Bedelia, and Nate the Great. And I loved all of those books. And I loved movies too. And, you know, when I was really little was when I really started watching movies with my mom, like The Way We Were, and the Alfred Hitchcock movies, and the Thin Man series, and all of those old greats that really made me realize the art of a story, you know, and that the impact that a story can have on somebody. And when I saw Out of Africa, if you've seen the movie, years and years and years ago, when she goes and she's having dinner with Robert Redford. Robert Redford comes to her house and he says, let's have a story. And she tells the story and he has to give her the first line and then she creates a story about it. It's one of the most magical moments in any film I have ever seen. And so to be a storyteller is really an honor, and I love it so much. And to be able to share stories of my life with you guys, and that you're willing to sit there and listen. I can't get anybody to listen to my stories anymore. My husband's like, I've heard these stories before, you know? But for me, it's exciting, and I've been like looking back over all of my blogs, because I've had 4 separate blogs. I've written, guest blogged for the Huffington Post and other blogs. I've written for like major publications. I have a book published, and I'm working on another book of fiction as well as this nonfiction book that will be like a memoir. So this channel is very much like a living memoir, and I'm very excited about it. And when my mom passed away, she left me the most incredible story of all. And what she left me was the story of her life. And this is about, I would say, a little bit of 4 or 5 boxes that contain every bit of her life from age, let's see, I think 18, right before she turned 18 on, and I had a picture on here that I was going to share with you, but now I can't find it. From age 18 on, my mother kept a journal of every day of her entire life. And I literally, it's a little overwhelming sometimes, I'll be honest with you. And she has, pieces of paper, just random pieces of paper on the back of like, look, this is on the back of a church hymn. I love that. And these little memo books, which my mother loved. And I have so much of her life. And to have that passed on to me in a story, I never would have imagined. But better yet, my mother wrote a book about her life. And what she did was she wrote a book called Dear Mick, or Waiting on a Friend. And so my mother never got the opportunity to be a storyteller. So today on my first video on this new channel, I thought I would share a little bit of my mom's story with you guys so that I could get a little bit of her story out there and allow her dream to come true in something that I'm doing. On June 11th, on the back of this hymnal, my mother wrote, June 11th, 2004, I'm going to start again to write something definitive about my life. I started a couple of years ago writing tongue-in-cheek, a series of Dear Mick letters, something to do with gender injustice. But I've aged some now, so I still care, but not for the same reasons. I subtitled it Waiting on a Friend, one of the Rolling Stones songs, of which Mick Jagger might have written. I don't know who wrote it, maybe one of them, maybe Mick. Anyway, I coined that title because I started to tell my story about 10 years ago. And part of my story was that one night I was waiting on a friend to pick me up and take me to Michigan, or to take me somewhere. And so it seems apropos to all of my stories. If only I were a storyteller. Love and peace. After I moved from my home, I started writing something called Dear Mick, or I'm Waiting on a Friend. It was letters written to Mick Jagger about different issues of the day, mainly to do with men and women, and how some things never change and probably never will. So the majority of this book is written about the fact that my mother had huge issues with all of these rock stars that she loved, that about the time that she started turning 40, because they started turning 40 by the same time, they left the women that they had been with and they started dating younger women. And my mother never understood that, right? Why men always wanted younger women. And she had no issues with the women. She just had questions for the men. Like, why is it that you're leaving the woman at this point? What is it about this point in your life? And so she would write these, in here I have probably 500 letters to Mick Jagger. It's so interesting to me now that I wrote it, because right before I moved, I had called my best friend Diane one day after one of Caroline's wedding showers the night before, and talked to her a lot of the day and night and asked her to come pick me up. I was moving from my house of 18 years, and I did not want to move. I had said as much that morning while talking to my sister in her kitchen. All I said was, I don't want to move. And she threw a basket at me. And so that's what I was talking to Diane about when I got home. That, along with that I didn't want to move, and would she please pick me up to go where I didn't know. Maybe Beaver Island, her home, I guess, where she lived. So later when I wrote the name of the book, Dear Mick, or I'm Just Waiting on a Friend, I had Diane in mind. That was early 1995. Now it's November of 2003. And Diane to the date has been gone 2 years. Isn't it odd that when I wrote that book beginning, she was alive, and that I didn't know that she'd be gone later, which is now. November 29th, 1992. I passed my 49th birthday. Kathy and Dave took me and Peter to dinner downtown. We went to the Eller House, and I thought of a story idea tonight, something like Dear Mick, and thank you, Bob Dylan. When Bob Dylan on his 50th birthday said, most of it garbled, we're all just a bag of spirit. Walking around, I kind of agree. My mother used to always talk about being a bag of soul. I saw Windy City yesterday, it's a movie, and when he said about his friend Sam, most of all, I miss Sam. Of all of my friends, I loved him the most. And I sobbed uncontrollably, missing my old friend Diane. I loved when Sam asked about heaven and asked, do you think we have a soul? That he had read in a book saying, our souls live forever. And that's what made me think of Bob Dylan saying, we're all just a suit of spirit. I wish I could put it all down, but maybe I don't have enough time left. My childhood, high school, college, all of my feelings and insights about my life, dating, my marriage, my child. Dear Mick, May 18th, 1999. Now realizing that experience I have had, continue to have, are not unique, and I'm mad about it. What I thought was special to me is not so, and I feel like a fool. What a laugh riot I am. What I have seen in myself in the last 20 years, I now see in people much younger than myself. Things that I experienced or felt is not unique to myself. Will I stay apart from them, or will I be with them, or I'll be part of them? Now, and what will be the lessons that there are to learn? I give up. September 12th. What did you do before the tragedy? Number 1, what did you think was important to you? Number 2, what did you neglect before September 11th? Number 3, what do you pledge to do now? Number 4, what would be left undone or unsaid if your loved one died today? Number 5, what must you do behaviorally now to make a new life? It is not enough to get it and say, oh, I get it. You have to change and live your life differently. Number 6, what is your story? I hope you guys stay along for the journey that is going to be this channel. Like I said, I am really, really excited about sharing stories of my life with you. And at the end of the day, and at the end of my videos, I always want you to ask yourself one question. What is your story? I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.